Hey everybody, welcome to another GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Warhammer 40,000, the Maelstrom, Lair of the Tyrant, which is the latest in a series of kind of end of edition campaign supplements for Warhammer 40,000 and follow up to 500 Worlds Titus, the battle for Unity begins. And it's accompanied, this is one of those videos I'm going to do where there's just too much to do in one video, so I'm kind of road mapping this. And also, if you don't want to watch 5 videos today, you can skip ahead, or you can listen to this and you'll get the too long, don't want to watch it all version of the events. So, as people said they enjoyed that, and that's kind of worth doing, I think, to keep from, and you can pick and choose what you want to watch later on. So, this was all kindly sent as complimentary review copies by Games Workshop. It is another 4-book slipcase. And it is followed up by the Lords of the Maelstrom Battle Force, which is a complete Red Corsairs kind of like incursion scale army. The new Huron Blackheart and his Inner Circle like command box, and then Prince Iriel's Eldritch Raiders, which is another like army in a box battle force, which is coming out from Workshop, and is different from the Battle for Unity Begins. So other videos in this series today, if you want to skip ahead or if you don't want to listen to the spoilers. And kind of like my roundup of all of this stuff. We have, I'm going to split this into 4 more videos. So detachment rules and models for the Red Corsairs, then for the Eldritch Raiders. Then we're going to do the something of Champions, Crucible of Champions, which is it's the Warhammer 40,000 version of the Anvil Apotheosis from Warhammer Age of Sigmar. And then finally, the campaign rules for doing the real space raids in the Maelstrom, which I think are probably the strongest part of this box. And so you can pick and choose which of those things you're interested in watching. And I'm going to give you kind of my roundup of all this right now. So let's talk about this book, because this obviously was the first one. It focused on obviously the retaking of the worlds, but it was kind of a follow-up to the Kill Team supplement for Tomb World, in that it brought back boarding actions. It gave you specific boarding action detachments. It gave you some campaign rules to play through the 500 Worlds and incorporate even boarding actions in your campaign games. And it gave you kind of the current events of what's going on with Titus, and links sort of the video game of Space Marine 2, what's going on in the secret level episode that happened, and his new miniatures, and gives you a story of where he's at in the world. So cool kickoff, obviously tied to the current like hot IP. And was sort of like, it was in the current zeitgeist. What's this box? Well, this box is for guys like me. This is a whole bunch of references. In fact, most of what's in these 2 boxes link back to these 2 books right here, which are obviously the foundation of Warhammer 40,000. 1987, Warhammer 40k Road Trader, first edition of Warhammer 40k. We get our first reference to the Eldritch Raiders. They're actually on page 181 when they start describing the Eldritch. You can see my hardcover obviously is falling out a little bit here, but on page 181 you have your first reference, which is held up even today in the Space Elves section right here to the Eldritch Raiders and their symbol, that hooded eye. And then Prince Iriel himself gets named later on, as well as the complete origin of Lifkit here on the Tyrant of Badab in the Badab War section of Warhammer 40,000 Compendium, which is all White Dwarf articles. But you have Iriel's personal company and the Eldritch Raiders right here in their color scheme. And this color scheme goes forward actually into the future. You can see that eye symbol is Iriel's symbol, which is on his back banner now for the miniatures that have been made for him for the last few years. So when I say that these are winks and nods to past stuff, oh, and just the entire Badab War is in here. So like all of the Badab War stuff, page 33, this is where Huron Blackheart, comes from basically, is this part of the supplement right here, this index trace. Lifkit Huron's apparent mental destabilization, and the Master of the Tire Claws and the Lord of Badab attacked and destroyed the Imperial Investigation Fleet as it entered orbit around Badab. So this whole sort of like mini rebellion is covered in that book. And that's the if the first campaign supplement was the new, this is the old. It's references for kind of coming up to date. His first stat line was in the 2nd edition Chaos Codex. My buddy Rob actually is a huge Red Corsairs fan, and I'll probably get him to paint all this stuff up so that we can play some games at some point. And this is an homage to all of that previous lore and background that's in Warhammer 40,000. So 4 books, obviously detachments for playing the Red Corsairs and Iriel's Raiders, the Eldritch Raiders. That's this book right here, Lair of the Tyrant. And this is our too long don't want to watch part. We're just getting all of the the background for what's kind of going on with these guys in the contemporary Warhammer 40K universe in the Maelstrom, and the Maelstrom itself, because the Maelstrom is kind of like a habitable Eye of Terror, right? It's still not safe, but it's more, and like these weirdo worlds, which I think are really cool, but it's more safe than, you know, the Eye of Terror is. Lots of great old art in here. The book is super well done. Again, we'll talk about this in a minute as we go through the different sections, or in the separate videos. But the thrust of this is, here's this like fun playground to play games in. We have our detachments. They cover the two different factions, right? So we've got the Red Corsairs and Uriel's Raiders. And then we have the Crucible Champions. This is the weakest part of this release. It's character customization, basically the way you used to do a couple editions ago. There's nothing new here. It's kind of just putting it back in the game for all armies. The point being, and then they have a section on like how to do a conversion. I'm like, yeah, man, we know. Like, you only took this out for like an edition or two. Like, we remember how to do this. You just made your model kits harder to do it with. And then all of the factions get their own version of that. So I'm gonna cover all these books individually. But the thing I'm most excited about is this, which is the Raid and Ruin section. And this is playing incursion games. It's legitimizing 1,000-point games in Warhammer 40K in a narrative and, you know, like asymmetrical style. It's got like rules for playing the Maelstrom where shit can just get weird. And then tons of different sort of like parameters for playing these mayhem missions where, like, you know, stuff gets crazy because you're playing in the Eye of Terror. You can see deployments are asymmetrical. Mission styles can be like attacker defender. You can have like, you know, duels between, you know, the princes. And the idea here is that you're supposed to be like telling the legend of like your main character in your story and playing small games, like small intimate games, which I've been asking for to come back to Warhammer 40,000 forever. And yeah, and I think is probably, again, the strongest part of this book, because it just kind of legitimizes it and gives you like a fun way to play, but also some parameters for building your army so that things don't get out of whack fast. Because like, obviously everyone's instincts is to try and win. And they give you some guardrails for playing smaller games and not having stuff get off the rails too fast, right? So this is an attempt, it feels like, to make something that is more accessible. So here's my opinion part-time for kind of winding this down. This is a better on-ramp for Warhammer 40,000. This will be played by more players than the 500 Worlds was, because while boarding actions are really cool, it requires a bunch of additional items outside of this. Anyone could pick this up, and with the current like if you have like the start of an army laying in a corner somewhere, play these Raid and Ruin, Lair the Tyrant campaigns in the Maelstrom and have a fun time doing it. If you start either the armies, obviously, even more fun. Playing with the Red Corsairs or the Eldar is going to give you like a ton of, you know, like thematic reasons for being there, because the pirates will hide in the Maelstrom. Obviously, the Webway is where Uriel's going to be lurking, all the various factions that are kind of trying to make their way in there and hiding from Imperial rule. It also sort of legitimizes the idea, which is fun, of doing your own thing in Warhammer 40K, which I think, honestly, this I love to see, because Workshop's pushing back on that idea that tournaments are the only way to play 40,000, or just their games in general. And again, is it perfect? No. I think this, again, I think this is the weakest part, because it's just like, hey, look at how cool and new this way of we always did things for almost 40 years is. And it's like, yeah, guys, like, we didn't need a book for this. Like, I get it, but like, please just bake this back into 11th edition and start making your model kits like able to make more than one thing again and have bits that are interchangeable. You know, like, it's more fun to build older Games Workshop models all the time because you don't need the instructions, because they don't fit together in weird esoteric ways that only make sense if you do them like following exact guidelines. And yeah, and there, again, this is the liminal space between editions. So I'm really hoping what this is representative of where Warhammer 40,000 is going in the future, into a more kind of like wide on-rampy, you know, wide imagination, less focused, more focused on like the worlds they're building and the models they make, and less focused on, you know, this sort of like this perfect chase for balance, because that runs you into a rabbit hole of a diminishing amount of interested people at some point who want to play 3-hour games where like it's a clinical exercise, like you're doing brain surgery. So yeah, I'm excited about this one. Again, I hope it's a thing for the future. I do like all the attempts made in here. I'm picking on the Crucible of Champions because to me this long in, and because it doesn't make sense with all the winks and nods in here too. If the winks and nods in here are 4 people, you know, I'm gonna feel a little bit cynical about putting customization of characters back in, where I'm like, that's just the way the game's always been. But it's very useful for people who are new to the hobby. So I understand why it's there. I'm just cynically looking at it and being like, yeah, guys, you took it out. Now you're excitingly putting it back in, you know? So that's more of a long perspective thing. But overall, great supplement. I do think it's probably a stronger supplement than 500 Worlds, simply because of the accessibility and the amount of people that'll probably end up playing it, because you don't need the boarding actions terrain. You can play at any table. And the Raid and Ruin missions at a smaller size means there's just less financial lift to playing the campaign. If you just buy this book set and you've got half an army that you're working on that you want to just finish up, you're ready to play Raid and Ruin, right? And that's, to me, that's a net bonus, is the more people can be around a table or at a gaming night or in your basement with some beer playing games with your buddies, the better a product obviously is, because you can still have fun playing. Like, the competitive players can still play a competitive game and play competitively if they want. It's not going to feel fair because some of the missions are obviously done asymmetrically. It's not going to be a game of paintball the way that most 40K missions are now. But the sort of widening up of the experience to be less dialed in, I think, is important for people who they want the time that they've spent investing in the imagination of making their little army and watching them walk around. They just want to have some memorable moments and events, and this kind of provides that. So there it is. We can jump ahead now. There's going to be, again, 4 more videos. So detachment and model coverage for the Lords of the Maelstrom, the Eldritch Raiders, and then, of course, we're going to cover the Crucible Champions in more detail. You get more of my opinion. I can show you what I think. And then, obviously, Raid and Ruin, the Incursion level mission. So big thanks to Workshop sending this along, and for you guys to watch 4 more videos if you want today. It's Alexander Nash. That's all you.